today here on the main stage is going to be future-proof your operations with an ecosystem approach. I'll be welcoming Patrick Harrigan, our Head of Partnerships and Alliances here at Tulip, Mark Freedman, our Ecosystem Lead here at Tulip, and Matt Lowe, the CEO and co-founder of ZeroKey.
All right, a little bit less intimidating audience than I was anticipating, so this will be great. Look, we want to leave time at the end for questions, so please feel free as we continue the discussion to think of them, hold them, and we'll certainly get to them at the end. So as Maddie alluded to, I'm Patrick. I lead our global partnerships. It's everything from our tech partnerships to our strategic alliances, our work with hyperscalers, consulting, OEMs, so on and so forth. And as you can imagine, part of my role is certainly very heavily tied to this word we've mentioned a few times already called ecosystem. I'm gonna try my hardest not to mention ecosystem 100 times during this presentation, but based on the title, it's going to be in there a few times, right? So let's get started. I think I didn't know exactly what Yuri was going to present this morning, but it goes perfectly in line with what we're going to talk about, so I'm excited. He laid a good foundation for us. One thing that has always impressed me about Yuri is not only his ability to innovate, but through that innovation process, he's really done a great job of going to market and pulling in best-of-breed software and hardware providers to pull into his ecosystem, both big and small. So the SAPs of the world all the way down to small startups, Tulip being a good example, and finding ways to integrate those in a meaningful way to deliver value, quick time to value to his organization. So that very much alludes to what we'll talk about today. I often think about how do we take what we're doing in the industrial sector and tie it into what we experience in our everyday lives on the consumer world? And then when you think of the term ecosystem, what type of ecosystem do we interact with, or ecosystems do we interact with on a daily basis? First thing that comes to my mind is the cell phone that everyone has in their pocket, in their hands, and the ecosystem that's fully built around making your life much easier, much more user-friendly than you could ever expect, right? And there's really many contributors to that. There's the phone manufacturers themselves, whether it's Apple or Samsung, or I don't know if there's another one that exists because I'm a little bit of a Apple snob myself. But and then certainly the connectivity, so the providers, Verizon, AT&T of the world, they're connecting you to be able to receive data and stream data. Okay, then we're talking the streaming services, and then you certainly can talk about the whole value in the App Store. Each of these individually valuable, but together they become invaluable, providing this ecosystem approach to making our lives, again, much easier. And then we look to operations, right? Now, this isn't ISA 95. I know we probably have some manufacturing engineers in the room, so please, I wasn't intending that on this slide. The concept is whether it's hardware and the machines that we have to connect to, the data acquisition layer and the IoT layer, certainly enterprise applications and enterprise software, and then ultimately down to infrastructure and connectivity, and so on and so on and so on. There's probably like 8 more layers that we could include here. But the gist is, if you look at the synergies that exist in the consumer sector, and again, the example being your cell phone, versus what exists when we talk about an ecosystem for industrial or industrial operations, it's really night and day. So how do we begin to bridge that? And why do we think Tulip is the one to sort of lead that effort? Now, ecosystems and the concept, especially industrial operations, I wouldn't say is new. I mean, it's not rocket science, but why is now the right time in which we think that it can be effective, can be here to stay, and we can actually make an impact with it? Well, first and foremost, frontline operations is a very big category with a lot of diversity and a lot of complexity. No one vendor, no 2 vendors, no 5 vendors can solve all of the challenges and problems that need to be solved within our disparate operations, within our disparate plants. Certainly when we look at how digitization is done today, top down, there's a million debates out there, so we won't spend a ton of time on this. But certainly allowing for bottoms up type of innovation by providing quick, rapid, easy to use solutions for folks in the plant, on the shop floor, that fit their environment, fit their operations. Certainly operations itself is inherently both physical and virtual, so meaning a mixture of hardware and software. So when we look at an ecosystem approach, we can't just talk about the virtual aspect. We have to look at our hardware vendors, our machine vendors. How do we pull those folks into this ecosystem in a very meaningful way? And then last but not least, certainly with technological advancements and the ever-changing end user expectations, again, the simplicity of using an app on your phone, how do we incorporate that into this ecosystem as well? So I think when we look at the US in particular, there's, when it comes to digital transformation, there's an expectation of what digital transformation should look like within a factory versus what's the reality. And I see a few folks in the room who've actually done some of these transformations and can attest to the majority of facilities that we go in look more like the right-hand side of the screen than the left-hand side of the screen, right? And if you look at the overarching number of facilities and factories that exist here in the US, roughly 300,000, and then the amount of facilities that really are 100 employees and less, that don't have huge budgets, that have to really bootstrap solutions together. They can't just go to one big industrial vendor and say, give me everything you got. They have to get creative with ways to solve these problems. They have to use things that the company's invested in over the previous decades, whether it's software, hardware, or a mixture of both. And quite often, going into these brownfield environments, again, this ecosystem concept is what will make them effective, efficient, and provide quicker time to value to their end users. If we drill in this a little bit deeper, again, in these brownfield environments, there's an infinite number of variability, really infinite variability across the board, meaning plant A is much different than plant B, than plant C, different systems, different hardware, different SKUs. So trying to find a solution that's going to fit both. And again, I speak of it from an ecosystem perspective. So not just software, but hardware as well. How do we get it integrated? How do we alleviate and eliminate these manual processes so we see better, more real-time data? So these are the current environments that we see and we operate in. And this is where an ecosystem approach has been very much lacking and providing quick time to value to the folks trying to solve these problems on the shop floor. And then, as you know, if you're familiar with Tulip, this is really our value proposition. How do we augment the operators on the shop floor? How do we use best-in-class technologies? Many of the folks that you'll see on the other side of this white drape here. And how do we make it super simple for them to not only deliver the software component, but work with partners to deliver off-the-shelf connectivity for things like computer vision, for things like real-time location, which Matt will talk about here in a moment. Great partner in ZeroKey. And again, how do we move this forward so that it provides this quicker time to value with off-the-shelf connectivity, integrations, ideas, use cases, all of that. I think it's important to sort of look where we've come from as we're making this journey. Natan alluded to, we're really launching this ecosystem approach, tech ecosystem approach today. But moving forward, this is really the foundation for a much larger ecosystem that we're trying to build. It didn't happen overnight, meaning it took a while for us to get to this point. I think if any of you are early Tulip adopters, our mantra back in the early days was, you can do anything and everything, you can build anything and everything, just as long as it existed within Tulip, right? And then we began to capture best practices as we learned more and more. We said, okay, let's take some of these best practices and templatize them, and you can have them, and we can provide quicker time to value by you can leverage the templates that are available, just as long as you're using Tulip or it remains within Tulip to solve that problem, right? That only took us so far. Obviously, logically, the next step is openness and connectivity. How then do we open the platform to say, okay, if we need to ingest data from other systems of record, if we need to send data, if we need to workflow data, that's the next iteration in our progression. Tulip being one piece in a much larger industrial architecture discussion. Again, I can use Yuri's example of what that might look like in production. But again, the mantra was, yep, it's open, and you can do anything and everything, but you still have to go do it, right? So what's the next iteration, right? And it's really these, what we're calling shareable solutions, where they're much more tightly packaged and bundled with not only Tulip solutions, but alongside with our partner solutions. So you'll see many partners over on the other side here with HiByte and Litmus and dozens of others that we're working on these pre-packaged integrations. What does that mean? That means not only a technical integration, but all of the video content, use cases, anything and everything you would need as a manufacturing engineer to be able to click a couple buttons and deliver solutions, not only with Tulip, but Tulip plus X third-party solution into your environment. That's the direction we're going. So Natan, I won't focus too much on this. Natan covered this a lot early, but I can't thank our partners enough for coming and supporting this. Again, we see this as really as the first initial cohort of building a great, powerful ecosystem that's centered around our partners, right? Tulip is hopefully as Yuri alluded to again, the glue that brings all of these third-party systems and hardware together. But the reality is we're only as good as our partner network and the solutions that they can bring in conjunction with Tulip. And quite frankly, this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I don't know if anyone's been around long enough for New Kids on the Block. But we really do adopt or subscribe to this mantra that the old way of doing things has come and gone, and there's really a new cohort of partners that are coming to not only us, but certainly our partner ecosystem that are coming to the table with new innovative solutions, and together we're really building this powerful ecosystem. So that's really high level stuff, conceptual. Let's talk a little bit more granular on how this is deployed in production, and maybe as an engineer, Mark can share his background, how you could leverage this ecosystem moving forward. Go ahead.
Patrick.
Yep.
Hey, everybody. Okay, can you hear me? Nice, I can hear it. Good. So I'm Mark Freedman. Nice to meet you. I want to tell you a story about, I think it's a good example of what we're trying to solve and who we're trying to solve it for. So this is a story about a factory that I used to work in. I'm from the manufacturing industry originally, and at this factory we're assembling doors, and we are doing a Kaizen event. Continuous improvement is in our blood. We're trying to improve things, and we're trying to reduce the amount of line side inventory. So you can see at this line, there's all this inventory here at point of use, trying to reduce that. And in doing so, we want to put in and-on. So we want to empower, it's a Japanese principle, Toyota production system. We want to empower the line associates to pull a cord, stop the line. And if we're going to be running really lean on inventory, this could happen, and it's something we want to address. So you'll notice here that at each of these stations, our team, we have this week to do this event, we want to use these stack lights that are already there. Perfect, we think. We can just use those. Let's turn those on, and that'll be their signal for us. So we can't find the switch. They don't turn on. What do? We follow the wires all the way across there, up a beam, and then down, and then into this box. And we look in the box, and we see this. And this is a true story. That's not true. I Googled this picture. It's not an actual picture of the box. I wish I took a picture of the box. But we had a genius electrical engineer. He had been there for decades. He built all kinds of amazing solutions. I'm sure you see this in the factories that you're at, where you have some really skilled person who uses the tools that they're comfortable with, that are available to them, to create solutions. But when this person retired, and we're trying to make improvements, incremental improvements off this, we cannot operate in this. So how does the story end? We laminated a pink piece of paper and attached it to a dowel. And that was our signal. And it worked. But I think it speaks to the problem in manufacturing and the realities of it, like the reality versus expectation slide. I mean, how many Post-it notes do you see taped to workstations, for example? I mean, this happens all the time. I see nods. This is true. This is the reality. So we want to improve this. So what exists right now for the process engineer? If you're fresh out of college, or maybe not, you're just working in manufacturing, how do you figure out how to do what you want to do with the stack lights? You go on the internet. You Google it. So this is a Reddit post. I summarized it in the next slide here. There, okay. Basically, in my previous company, we had a programmable light, and it was very flexible. I'm not sure how to use it. The ones I'm finding online, the ones online are complicated. They require so many outputs. I just want something simple. It doesn't require a bunch of inputs and outputs. This is I think, a really good voice to the customer representation. And then someone just taking a picture. What is this? Stack light. I want another one. This is what people want, a community to lean on when they're looking for solutions to their problems. And that's the gap we're trying to fill. So what can you do? You can look online. You can go on Amazon. You can type in Stacklight, and you can find what's available. You'll find a bunch of stuff here. You'll find some good stuff. But if you find some of these lights, they're going to have maybe 2 wires coming out of them. What do I do with those wires? Where do I plug them into? I don't know what to do. But I can figure it out, I'm sure. But that's what you have to do. You have to figure it out. And then you could also go to a specialty vendor. So this is a company. I'm sure they're a great company. They offer a few different versions of radio signal and-on and Wi-Fi and-on and other and-on solutions. They also have their own proprietary system here. But if I want to get this, I have to click the button on the bottom, which is talk to a sales rep or something. And I just want a light. I'm still going with the laminating the thing in the stick right now. And then this other company, this is a full stack, again, probably a great company, but they offer so many solutions. They offer, probably the equipment that the things plug into and the protocols that go with it, and they have their own cloud system, but it's all kind of an end-to-end product portfolio. And we think about it differently. So you should be able to, this same person, by the way, the same person who's looking for these solutions can go to Best Buy down the street and buy a light bulb from any manufacturer, and it's going to work with Alexa, it's going to work with Google, it's going to work with any home automation thing they have, and it's going to work with their phone, no matter what kind of phone they have, and that is not the case, and we want to make that the case. So you should be able to go to Tulip, type in and-on, and you should see a bunch of different partners. So Banner, if you want to see some lights, check out our partner Banner. They've got some really cool lights over there. You can also get one from Amazon for 20 bucks. You can also use our own devices. So whichever solution you want to use, you should be able to use, and it should all work within the ecosystem. But beyond that, you should also have a community. So you should talk to people. What are you guys doing? Show me which light kits you use. Here's my use case. What do you think? That's available within Tulip. We don't care what you use. You should be able to use anything. You should be able to use from the story, those lights that were there. You should be able to plug Tulip gateways into all those and just off to the races. But we also have demos, examples, tutorials, templates, all sorts of things to get you started and get you started quickly. So this is what we're seeing and what we're imagining within the ecosystem. And it's not just lights. So there's all kinds of devices and integrations. Lights is just a really simple example I thought was a compelling story. But Matt from ZeroKey, for example, people want to be able to track with precision a lot of their stuff through their facility. And he has some really awesome, awesome example of the other kinds of equipment that's his team offers. So take it away, Matt. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Morning, everyone. So as Mark mentioned, my name is Matt Lowe. I'm CEO of a company called ZeroKey. We're one of the Tulip partners here. We have a nice little booth over there if you want to check us out. But what I want to talk about today is how the ecosystem comes together to actually deliver business value. And one of the things I really want to underscore is this isn't some theoretical value, this isn't some conceptual idea, this is reality actually driving value in businesses today. So this is a little case study we did with Tulip and ZeroKey together. We went to one of our customers that was a very traditional supply chain company. They had a warehousing operation, and to explain traditional, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the ERP system Navision. It was the early predecessor of Dynamics 365. Microsoft renamed that in 2005. This customer was still on an old version of Navision when we came in. So that gives you an idea of their kind of tech purchasing timelines. So we went into this environment where printed paper pick lists was the standard approach for determining what should come out of the warehouse, what should go in. And of course, this leads to all sorts of problems, human errors being the number one. And one of the interesting stories they told us is actually they had shipped a order just a couple of weeks before we went in and did this. That order was going to a hospital. As it turned out, the guy who picked the part picked the wrong part from the wrong bin, but then with the barcode scanner, scanned the right bin. This is a very common problem in supply chain. And unfortunately, that led to a hospital shutting down that division for about 4 days. So surgeries are canceled, appointments rescheduled, doctors not being profitable or active, and so on and so forth. So this type of problem, we see it everywhere. We were able to go in with the library widget that connects ZeroKey and Tulip over the course of one business day in this very traditional business, put together a frontline application for the warehouse staff that overnight transformed their process, literally changed the way they do business in a very traditional industry. And that led to all of the metrics you see here. 1.85 times faster order fulfillment, reduction in errors by 80%, $500,000 saved from spoilage and lost product, another massive use case. And ultimately, 565% return on investment annually. All of this to run the operation better and more effectively and more efficiently. And this is only possible because together we were able to take Tulip, ZeroKey, and connect them seamlessly with their frontline staff, and ultimately provide a solution for the customer that they were comfortable with, that they were able to intuitively use for their particular environment. Environments like this exist across the country. This particular client is part of a network of over 500 facilities just like this one. So this is one of the things that ecosystems really provide, where ZeroKey on its own probably wouldn't have been sufficient to overcome kind of the customer barrier, the customer friction to adoption of a solution like that. So with that, I think I will hand it back to Pat here. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay. So I wanted to leave a little time here towards the end for questions, but I mean, all in all, to drive this point home just a little bit, this is our primary focus, my team's primary focus, Mark's team's primary focus moving forward is how do we make this ecosystem a reality? How do we make stories like Matt just shared more commonplace? And certainly we can't do it alone, meaning there's white gaps that exist in our partner network today and the technologies we have integrations to, and we're very reliant on our customer base, our partners, to provide feedback on, you know what, it would be great if we did X, Y, and Z, and once we had that integration, we can build this solution, we can package it, we can put all the content around it, so on and so forth. So this is a little bit of call to action to everyone here in the audience. Please, whoever you work with at Tulip, whoever you're in contact with, if you have any ideas, any additional partners, integrations, use cases that you don't see in our new Tulip library or Tulip ecosystem page today, please speak up. We would love to work on it with you, as again, this is the foundation for the direction of Tulip moving forward, putting the partner at the center, very focused on empowering our customers with an ecosystem approach. So with that, I want to open it. I have a couple questions for you two gentlemen, so you can't leave yet. Any questions? It's a pretty small forum here, so please feel free to speak up. Happy to answer anything with the remaining time we have. Brian? Yeah. No? Okay, good.
What's on the roadmap from the ecosystem team? Like, what are you guys focusing on? Where's the near-term horizon?
Yeah. Do you mind turning all three mics on?
I can talk. Oh,
there you go.
Cool. So there's a few things, but first of all, there's a lot of things, but the focus, right? The focus is we believe that all this content that's come together through the partners. I mean, there's some great stuff over there. Please check them out. But it doesn't currently all ship through the library. You still have to do some setup. So HiByte, for example, best data ops provider out there. If you want to integrate with Tulip and HiByte, you need to follow some instructions right now to import their project file, get it onto your HiByte instance. It's not necessarily seamless. It's not just like going to Best Buy. And I think it needs to be. So in order to do that, we need to instrument the marketplace. We need to work closely with our partners. But we need to make the tooling so that when you download that banner device unit test, you don't need to go into the edge device and do a configuration with it as well. You should just be able to download it and go. And I think that's like some technical work we have to do on our end with our partners, so that on the high byte side, there should be a Tulip dropdown. Make it super simple. And on the Tulip side, there should be a high byte dropdown, that kind of thing. This should be very simple. And the marketplace, the library, should be the default way that you access all this content. So it's really about increasing our capability. And then the second piece that has to happen hand in hand is composability. And what I mean by that is these things should be interchangeable. You aren't locked into this notion of what a work order is if you download this work orders application suite with SAP. Maybe then you move to a different, maybe you move to AX. That composability needs to be built into the platform so you can just sub it out and not have to rebuild any of your apps. So this is what we think is going to make it really, really important and powerful. That's like the real power of this is the composability, because that's what failed in that example I showed. If you have to construct all of this with so much logic, so much in your head, and you can't really pass it on to the next generation of people who are going to improve the process. But if it's composable, like in its nature, and it's an ecosystem approach, then you should be able to sub and move these things around and craft solutions for your problems within a very short period of time. So I think those are the two focuses, composability and capability.
Mark, if I could expand upon that, we have how many citizen developers do we have now? 4,000 or something?
Yeah, thousands.
Yeah. What is the idea of potentially enabling those citizen developers to be able to come to this ecosystem and marketplace and share their, whether it's previous work or ideas or use cases, and be able to promote their content and work?
So yeah, this year there's 4 focuses. I listed 2 of them. So that's the third one is really is around this ecosystem identity. So it's not really right now. Our team. This is day 1, right? This is the ribbon cutting ceremony of the ecosystem. Right now, the only people who can publish into the library and onto Tulip are my team and our Tulip, and we want to change that. So we want it so that there's a talk around going to be happening with SBD somewhere around here. I encourage you to listen to that, because we want that team to be publishing to the library because they're doing amazing things in their facilities, and they understand the kinds of content that works, and they should have an identity within there that they can share across their businesses, as well as their individual folks who are creating this content should be able to have an identity as well within the ecosystem that they can carry as they move from one company to the next. A lot of our developers, our creators, our builders, they've moved jobs and they continue bringing Tulip where they go, and they shouldn't have to rebuild all of their ideas and these sorts of things. So they should have an identity within the ecosystem. So having that, being able to publish, is definitely an important step for us. And that's, you'll see, and a simple example is right now, for those who are familiar with our platform and our properties, you have separate logins to university, community, and Tulip. Just as a small example, if you think about what it looks like for those to be the same, and what a homepage might mean for you, and what it might mean to have your favorite content and to have this sort of idea, that's I think an important part of the ecosystem journey for us.
Yeah, it is. So not only partnering directly with other companies that help to augment our capabilities and functionality, but the citizen developers are actually doing the work, coming up with these great ideas and solutions, enabling them a platform to be able to promote some of their own work, access a broader customer base, things like that. Great question, Brian. See, I knew I called on you for a reason, right? Anything else? Yeah, please. I think we have a mic right here.
How you doing? Great use case conversation regarding making a change in 24 hours. But where I come from, nothing ever happens in 24 hours. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of upfront work that took place in order to be able to make that work. Can you talk a little bit about how you basically got the connectivity and the pipeline of data and everything and make that happen in 24 hours?
Yeah. So we obviously had a little information going into it. We had a lot of buy-in from the customer. So the customer was able to walk us through their existing process. And we were able to identify a couple of pain points They actually did a pretty good job, despite the fact it was pen and paper tracking, of identifying where they were failing, where they're making mistakes. So we were able to walk through that before we went to the site to deploy the system. And that really was maybe one of the big accelerators. Oftentimes we do find customers are not as savvy as to what their pain points are. They just know that there's a problem, but not particularly what's causing it. So sometimes there's a bit more investigation to do there. Beyond that, the real thing that just overcame those barriers was how simple the solution was, where the guys that were actually using the new system were able to intuitively go through it and understood immediately how much better it was. And these are guys that live that pain point every day, where frequently, like in this particular example, when they would pick orders from the warehouse, they'd move it to the shipping and receiving area. And then when the carrier came to pick up that order, they would actually have to get the guy who put it in the shipping and receiving area to figure out where it was, because the shipping and receiving area is quite big. So there's a lot of process there where things were already causing frustration. And when they got the new system in place, it was just so immediately, obviously better that they adopted it literally overnight.
And Matt, if I could ask another question there. Some of the upfront work between Tulip and ZeroKey that was involved in the effort to get it to a place where we could deploy in 24 hours from an integration perspective and use case definition. Do you mind going into that?
Yeah, so that's actually been a really fun journey. So we've been involved with Tulip for about a little over a year and a half. And it started as a demonstration when the tech center opened. It's kind of interesting because both platforms were designed to work with other platforms. And so we were actually able to write the initial integration really, really rapidly over the course of a day or so. And that was the initial connector. And then once we started to build the business relationship and have a lot of these common clients, that evolved to a very robust and reliable library widget in this case. And now it's very simple. So this particular instance, our team was able, on site with the customer, drag and drop widgets right into the application, type in some credentials for your ZeroKey instance, and they were talking, inside of 10 minutes. So that part is a very, very user-friendly process now that we've, gone through the initial legwork of building that out.
Is that helpful? You bet. Thank you for the question. I think it brings up one other point that is important to mention. This type of sales engagement, where you're configuring solutions while on site with customers, is something we're seeing more and more. It's a shift or a deviation from the traditional, let's bring in a big consulting firm to help evaluate the problems and take weeks, months to figure out solutions. It's a concept that we're exploring, so very similar to the machine kit right around the backside of this drape that you'll see over there. It's a few pieces of hardware in a box that you can bring to your site, plug in, build an application, and begin to capture data and collect data almost instantly. It's that type of same concept that can be made available to almost any area of the business. Quite often in the consulting space, we call it diagnostics in a box. So we want to understand areas of opportunity by tracking our throughput or whatever it might be. And so you might have a box that you bring with you with a few sensors, brake beam sensors, a barcode scanner, a printer, a tablet, and you don't know what problem you're going to solve until you show up. But because of the integration, the speed of deployment, and the configurability of the software, you can actually build and deploy something custom to put on the line within an hour, and now you're capturing data, what's my tack time, what's my cycle time, things like that. So it's becoming more and more something we're seeing is a shift from the traditional, this is going to take forever to figure out, to how do we enable the engineers. I mean, these are very bright people we have within our plants. We just haven't given them the tools to really be able to move as fast as they would like to and can. Any other questions? Please. We got a mic if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, or good morning, I should say. Question about a point you made earlier. You were asking that we let you know when we see there's a potential for another partnership or
Sure.
ecosystem partnership. I'm curious to know what kind of criteria do you folks use when you start to evaluate these things? Let's say, for example, in my shop we're using Universal Robot. And we'd love to have a ecosystem that includes Universal Robot with Tulip. What do you do on the back end to decide whether or not this is something you're going to pursue to help us out or maybe help another customer out in the
Sure.
process?
Funny enough, Universal Robot is a company that we've been exploring. So we have an onboarding process, and I will say that what we've done in preparation for operations calling, we basically look for partners that augment the functionality that Tulip provides, and quite frankly, fills the gaps that we have within our platform. And certainly, we'll never get in the robotics game, and so that's a great example. We certainly leverage a lot of the analyst relationships to do a little bit of vetting to find, is this best of breed, top of the line technology that exists within this space, and then we put them through an onboarding process. We are in the process of really revamping sort of a version 2 to that right now of that evaluation. So that will come out in the next couple months. But as we're shifting our focus to be really ecosystem centric, that also includes incentive programs and packages for partners, right? So why should someone want to be a part of Tulip's ecosystem? That's another area that we really need to invest in and to make sure that we're attracting the right type of partners to participate. And then certainly measuring results and scorecards and ensuring that the partnership is worthwhile long term. So a bunch of things that are actively in discussion and being built right now, but in general, that's how we're operating on it.
Good, thank you.
Good question, thank you. Please.
So Pat, with all of the Tulip platform and solutions, all of the solution partners in the ecosystem, and even the citizen developers, what's your approach or strategy for systems integration or implementation partners in the network to assist end customers with all of the various things they can do?
Yeah, you bet. So our implementation in SI network is a little bit more robust and a little bit more mature than our tech ecosystem partnerships right now. So we have been building out that team or that partnership program for several years now. We have about 40, 45 SIs, and then we certainly work with a lot of the GSIs as well. So that is big. It's a robust portfolio, and then when we engage with certain SIs, quite often on geo, area of expertise, scale. So as you'll see, there's a lot of big multinational pharmaceutical companies here today. Being able to deploy in China and Indonesia and Germany all at the same time quite often requires a unique skill set from an SI. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we have a very robust network of SIs now. The next iteration is how do we get our SIs trained up to be able to use our partners more often than they're using right now. Right now it's a little bit separated and disparate, but the goal is to have these merge. And as such, we've combined them under one umbrella as of recent here in the company. That help? Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you all so much for attending. I know there's a million other sessions you can go to, so I appreciate you being here. Have a great rest of your day. I'd love to talk to anyone afterwards if you have any questions. Please, our partners did a ton of work, ton of effort to come here and set up. Please take some time to go check it out. I think you'll be really excited to see what they've built over there. So thank you very much.